Throughout his NASCAR Cup Series career, Ricky Rudd was a quiet but consistent driver. Year after year, he kept winning 1 or 2 races a year. He was definitely an underrated driver, but how did he get to have the success he had in the Cup Series? Today we'll be going over the history of Ricky Rudd's career. Ricky Rudd was born on September 12th, 1956 in South Norfolk, Virginia, in what is now known as Chesapeake, Virginia. Ricky was born to Margaret McMahon and Alvin Rudd Sr. His father was the president of Al Rudd Auto Parts. Ricky's official name is Richard Lee Rudd. Ricky started racing as a teenager in karts and motocross, but Ricky would not drive a stock car until he was 18 years old in 1975. His first race would be the 1975 Carolina 500 Cup race at Rockingham Speedway. He would drive for family friend and former NASCAR driver Bill Champion. In the race, Ricky would start in 26th place and would come home a solid 11th place. He would then race in the next 3 NASCAR Cup Series races. Those races would be at Bristol, Atlanta, and North Wilkesboro. At Bristol, he would get his first top 10 with a 10th place finish, but he would finish in 25th place and 28th place at Atlanta and North Wilkesboro. North Wilkesboro would be the last race of the season for Rudd, but he would return to the Cup Series the next year. He would race for his father's team in 1976, and he would compete in 4 of the 6 races he tried to qualify for. One of the races he failed to make was the 1976 Daytona 500. You may know this race for this finish.
They only have about 750 yards to go. Oh! It's a domination straightaway. They did hit. Teddy smashes into the wall. Will he come across the start-finish line? He's going to win the race. He's going to win it spinning, as he, I believe, will take the checkered flag. No, he did not make it. He is less than 100 yards from it. Here comes Pearson. Pearson is going to try to make it across the finish line. Teddy has his car going. Pearson's going to win it. Oh, bashing the triangle. He wins the race.
However, Rudd would get a top 10 in the Firecracker 400 at Daytona in the summer. In 1977, Rudd would race in the majority of the Cup Series races. From race 1 to race 14, he would race in 9 of the races. But after race 14 at Riverside, he would race in the rest of the races. And this was a good season for Rudd, as he was able to grab 10 top 10s and his first top 5. The top 5 would be a 4th place finish in the second Talladega race. For 1978, he would race in 14 races. He would get 4 top 10s in those races. He also unfortunately failed to qualify for the last race of the season at Ontario Motor Speedway. For 1979, Rudd signed with Don Levy Racing to drive the Winston Cup Series. Rudd would race in 28 of those 31 races. In those races, Rudd was able to get 14 top 10s, 4 top 5s, an average finish of 12.1, and he would finish in 9th place in the point standings. Unfortunately, Rudd would race in only 13 races in the 1980 NASCAR Cup Series season. He would do these races driving for 3 different teams. His stats for 1980 in 13 races were 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, and an average finish of 21.1. But things would change for the better in 1981. Rudd would race in every single race in one season for the first time. Rudd would drive the number 88 Gatorade car for Dyguard Motorsports. Rudd would have a tough task to follow because the previous driver in the number 88 was Darrell Waltrip. Across 5.5 seasons, Waltrip scored 25 wins in the Gatorade ride. Now, obviously, Rudd didn't score 25 wins in one season, but he did have a good year. Despite not winning in 1981, he posted 14 top 5s, 17 top 10s, 3 poles, an average finish of 13.7, and a 6th place points finish. Not a bad season by any means. Despite having a good season, Ricky Rudd and Dyguard Motorsports would part ways. Rudd would sign on with Richard Childress Racing, and he would race for him in 1982 and 1983. Rudd would be driving the number 3 car. Yep, that's right. Rudd drove the number 3 car before Dale Earnhardt took over the 3. For 1982, Rudd would have a worse season than in 1981, but it wasn't too bad at all. Rudd would finish the year with 0 wins, 6 top 5s, 13 top 10s, an average finish of 16.4, and would finish in 9th place in the point standings. 1983 would be much better for Rudd. Ricky Rudd would finally win his first Cup race, that being the first race at Riverside. He would also win the second Martinsville race. Rudd would finish the season with 2 wins, 7 top 5s, 14 top 10s, 4 poles, an average finish of 15.3, and a 9th place points finish. After 1983, Ricky Rudd would be replaced by Dale Earnhardt, and as they say, the rest is history. This move left Rudd disappointed, and now he was out of a ride. But Rudd would sign on with Budmore Engineering to drive the number 15. This was the ride Dale Earnhardt had for 1982 and 1983. The start of the 1984 season would start scarily for Rudd. In the 1984 Busch Clash at Daytona, Ricky Rudd would be involved in a violent wreck. The car got out of shape and got airborne and came back down the ground and rolled over violently. Because of this wreck, Rudd would suffer a concussion and torn cartilage in his ribcage. Miraculously, Rudd would be able to race 1 week later in that year's Daytona 500. But he would need tape to keep his eyes open, and he would wear a flak jacket for his rib injury. Rudd finished in 7th place in that Daytona 500. Rudd would drive for Budmore Engineering from 1984 and 1987. In 116 races with the team, Rudd would score 6 wins with 2 wins apiece in 1986 and 1987. In those years, he had points finishes of 7th in 1984, 6th in 1985, 5th in 1986, and 6th in 1987. These were good seasons for the driver, nicknamed the Rooster. But after 1987, Rudd left Budmore Engineering. Ricky Rudd would join King Racing starting in 1988. King Racing was started by drag racing legend Kenny Bernstein, and the team first ran in 1986. Rudd's 1988 season with King Racing was one of his worst in a while. There were 11 different times throughout the season where Rudd suffered an engine issue. Rudd would end the season with 1 win, 6 top 5s, 11 top 10s, 2 poles, an average finish of 15.7, and an 11th place points finish. Rudd's 1988 season also included a knee injury suffered in a crash in the All-Star race. Rudd would also be fined $10,000 in 1988 after spinning out Dale Earnhardt in North Wilkesboro. It was certainly an eventful year. 1989 would be a much better year for Ricky Rudd. Unlike the previous season where Rudd would suffer multiple engine issues, Rudd would be able to have less issues. His 1989 stats are 1 win, 7 top 5s, 15 top 10s, an average finish of 14.4, and would finish in 8th place in the point standings. One of the most memorable moments of the season would be at North Wilkesboro. Rudd and Dale Earnhardt were fighting for the lead on the last lap when Rudd and Earnhardt both spun around. This gave the win to Jeff Bodine. Rudd would leave King Racing in 1989, and he would sign with Hendrick Motorsports for 1990. Rudd would pick up where he left off. Rudd's 1990 season was quite similar to his season in 1989. Rudd would finish the season 7th place in the point standings. Unfortunately, the season would end on a sad note. In the last race of the season at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Rudd would be involved in a fatal wreck. Rudd was on pit road, and he spun his car around, and it would spin into Bill Elliott's pit stall. Rudd's car would crush crew member Mike Rich. Rich would unfortunately pass away hours later during surgery. Ricky Rudd would continue to drive for Hendrick Motorsports for 1991. Rudd would now take over the Tide ride after Darrell Waltrip departed from Hendrick Motorsports to drive for his own team. Rudd would have his best season up to that point in 1991. Rudd's 1991 stats are 1 win, 9 top 5s, 17 top 10s, 1 pole, an average finish of 9.5, and he finished in 2nd place in the point standings. However, Rudd's 1991 season would not be without controversy. At Sonoma Raceway, Ricky Rudd landed the pole and would find himself in 2nd place with 3 laps to go. Coming to the white flag, Rudd would spin out the 1st place driver Davey Allison. Because of this, Rudd would assume the lead. But coming to the finish, Rudd was shown the black flag. Then when Davey Allison came around, he was shown the checkered flag. Rudd would finish in second place. After this, team owner Rick Hendrick and crew chief Waddell Wilson unsuccessfully tried to appeal the penalties. If Ricky Rudd had won the race, he would have gotten a bonus paycheck with the winning money. Rudd would continue to drive for Hendrick Motorsports the next 2 seasons. He would get 1 win per season during that time. He would also have points finishes of 7th place in 1992 and 10th place in 1993. Rudd was still consistent as ever. Things would, however, change for 1994. In 1993, it was announced that Ricky Rudd would form his own team for the 1994 season. Rudd would bring over existing sponsor Tide to his newly formed team called Rudd Performance Motorsports. As part of the announcement, Rudd said, "This move enables me to continue as a driver and at the same time build on my experience by entering the management side of racing." Rudd went on to say that he would be foolish not to do it. Rudd would continue his success in 1994. He was able to have 1 win, 6 top 5s, 15 top 10s, an average finish of 12.3, and he would finish in 5th place in the point standings. Oh, but the success doesn't stop there. 1995 and 1996 are also great seasons for Rudd. He won once in 1995 and 1996. Rudd also finished in the point standings in 9th place in 1995 and 6th place in 1996. It seems like Rudd could only continue the success he had been having. But unfortunately for Rudd, things would go downhill. Rudd's 1997 season would show the first signs of the decline of Rudd Performance Motorsports. Despite winning 2 races, he would only have 6 top 5s, 11 top 10s, with an average finish of 20.6, and he would finish in 17th place in the point standings. It was clear that Rudd was off. 1998 would not be any better for Rudd, as he would only win 1 race and have 1 top 5, 5 top 10s, and an average finish of 23.2, and he would finish in 22nd place in the point standings. Even with that, the 1 win he did get was miraculous. Due to high air temperatures and a faulty cooling system, Ricky Rudd would suffer burns and blisters throughout most of his body. He would even be lying down on the ground in Victory Lane with an oxygen mask and somehow give an interview in Victory Lane. 1999 would see Ricky Rudd hit rock bottom while driving for his own team. Rudd had 0 wins, 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s, 1 pole, an average finish of 26.2, and Rudd finished in 31st place in the point standings. Things really did turn for the worst. Eventually, sponsor Tide would leave Rudd Performance Motorsports. After that happened, Rudd decided to close the team and liquidate his equipment. Now Rudd would no longer be a driver for his own team. But Rudd would continue to race in NASCAR. For 2000, he would be tapped to drive the number 28 Texaco Havoline car for Robert Yates Racing. The season would start off with a wild crash in the Bud Shootout at Daytona. Rudd was competing in the exhibition race because he had grabbed a pole in the 1999 season. On the last lap of the race, Dale Jarrett was able to get around Jeff Gordon and win. But behind them, a crash broke out where Rudd would go upside down. Rudd would be able to race in the Daytona 500 the very next week. Rudd's 2000 season was a massive improvement over 1999. Rudd had 0 wins, but he also had 12 top 5s, 19 top 10s, 2 poles, an average finish of 11.5, and finished in 5th place in the point standings. Rudd still had what it takes to be one of the best drivers in NASCAR. It looks like his own equipment was hindering his success in NASCAR. The next 2 seasons at Robert Yates Racing were also successful for Rudd. From 2001 to 2002, Rudd scored 3 wins and had points finishes of 4th place and 10th place. Ricky Rudd was successful once again, but his time at Robert Yates Racing wouldn't be without controversy. Following the 2002 Richmond Fall race, Rudd got into a heated argument with Robert Yates Racing engine specialist Larry Lackey. Lackey proceeded to punch Rudd in the face, and in retaliation, Rudd threw a water bottle at Lackey. In the end, Rudd would be fined $5,000 and would be put on probation, while Lackey would be fined $10,000. Larry Lackey would eventually resign from his position at Robert Yates Racing. Rudd would ultimately leave Robert Yates Racing at the end of the 2002 season. For 2003, Rudd signed with the historic Wood Brother Racing. Right off the bat, Rudd was not as competitive as the last 3 seasons, but it wasn't all bad. In 2003, Rudd had 0 wins, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, an average finish of 22.3, and he would finish in 23rd place in the point standings. 2004 was worse in some categories while better in some categories. Rudd had 0 wins, 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, an average finish of 21.2, and he finished in 24th place in the standings. Rudd also scored his last pole this season. He scored the pole in the first Talladega race. His 2005 season would be his last season driving for Wood Brothers Racing. This season was his best season with the Wood Brothers. His 2005 stats are 0 wins, 2 top 5s, 9 top 10s, an average finish of 20.8, and he finished in 21st place in the point standings. After 2005, Rudd would take a break from racing. In 2006, Rudd had only 1 stint in NASCAR. At Dover Motor Speedway, Rudd qualified for the ailing Tony Stewart. But in 2007, Rudd would return to full-time racing, driving for Yates Racing in the number 88 car. This was unfortunately a terrible season for Ricky Rudd. Towards the end of the season, Rudd separated his left shoulder in a wreck at Auto Club Speedway. Because of this, Rudd would miss 5 races. Rudd returned to the driver's seat in the fall Charlotte race. Ricky Rudd would officially retire after the 2007 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series season. Rudd's 2007 stats are 0 top 5s, 1 top 10, an average finish of 26.3, and he would finish in 33rd place in the point standings. As of 2021, Rudd has backed off from go-kart races he was doing. In fact, he had not been to a NASCAR race since his last race in 2007. Rudd explains it like this: "Why go back to the racetrack when no one will know who I am?" But Rudd is still a NASCAR fan, though he does miss the people from his racing days. Only one thing continues to elude him, being the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He has been on the ballot for multiple years and has not made it in. Maybe one day Rudd will make the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Here's what Ricky Rudd says that he wants to be remembered for from his career. "Hey, I had my day and it was a lot of fun. It's more than a job. People don't quite understand that. It's less of a job and more of a lifestyle. I enjoyed that lifestyle. But you know, I can enjoy my lifestyle now too. So just a lot of good friends and memories that I wouldn't trade for anything." Ricky Rudd has made 906 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series, including 788 consecutive starts, 23 wins, 194 top 5s, 374 top 10s, and 29 poles. Rudd is also the 1977 Rookie of the Year. Rudd's biggest accomplishments are winning the 1997 Brickyard 400 and winning the 1992 IROC Championship. Ricky Rudd was a great NASCAR driver. Thanks for watching.